Hello everybody and welcome back to BUS414 Globalization and Business. My name is Roland and today we are going to talk a bit more about opportunities versus prosperity in terms of globalization. Now, in order to do that, I want to look at tariff and non-tariff interventions that national governments can use and what the effects on the business is. And as a final topic, I want to look a bit more at markets, what they are, how they're being used, and how that impacts the whole equation of business decisions. How do tariffs work in practice? When we look at any kind of product, we have supply on one side and demand on the other. When we implement or impose a tariff, it adds cost to total purchasing or ownership costs, which means the product becomes more expensive for the buyer. What that means is that buyer experience a lower utility, which means a different cost-benefit ratio. And if we seek to maximize our utility, at some point we will start to look for alternatives and probably purchase alternatives rather than the product that is now more expensive because of a tariff. Now, the demand function part of this works that in that way, when the price goes up, we will buy less. If the price goes down, we will buy more, all things considered equal. The supply function, on the other hand, sees that the quantity we want to supply to the market increases because we can make more money and sell more products at the same time. However, this is of course mediated by the demand function, and when we bring them together, we can find where these two curves cross is the market equilibrium, where we can maximize benefit for both suppliers and those who demand. Now, if we add a tariff, our supply curve as a supplier shifts upward, and the demand curve for the buyers shifts to the left. However, in order for this to work out, it means that we need to talk about equally sized countries with an equal influence on the global market. If these countries are of different size and have different power over the international market, we will see very different outcomes in the supply-demand function. A small country that has very little influence on the global market cannot affect the global market and its equilibrium to a large degree. And a country that has an affluent population can use tariffs in order to gain revenue. Now, how does this work? A small country with an affluent population like Monaco, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, if they impose a tariff on a certain good, people in that country can still afford it, they won't buy less, and the government can create revenue from this tariff without any kind of effect on the international market. However, at the same time, domestic suppliers will be disincentivized over this. And you can see that there are relatively few suppliers in these small affluent countries anyways, and favor can go to non-domestic suppliers of any given good. When we look at import quotas mean that you can only import a certain number of goods, a certain value of goods, and that artificially reduces the amount of supply and artificially increases the price domestic and foreign producers can charge for their product. Now, anytime when you limit supply, people will be still needing the product, and they will be willing to fork out higher purchasing costs for any given good. But how does trade policy affect business decisions? And I want to bring up 3 examples of different countries and sectors. But we can state that businesses make decisions as a result of trade policy, or trade policy does affect the business's decision to go and sell in a certain market or not. When we look at the English teaching sector in China, a lot of people, after they graduate from university, they go to China and teach English. I strongly advise you against that. And the reason why I'm advising against that is not only in the current situation, but the issue of the Chinese teaching English sector, so to speak, is not a new one. Learning English has long been a very popular subject across all of Asia. And the fact that Asian languages are a completely different stream of language than what English or other European languages is, makes it very difficult for Asian people to learn English and Western people to learn Asian languages. So you need really good teachers for that. And the Chinese vendors of teaching English hired a lot of foreigner people from abroad in order to teach English in their establishment. Now, going there means that you can get a very high salary and relatively cheap living cost, which means you can make a lot of money. Now, this equation started not to work out when living costs were disproportionately rising, and it is very difficult to get money out of China. And by the time of 2012-2013, Chinese government decided, we have enough English teachers here in China, we don't need foreigners. And one of my previous English teachers was teaching English in China at that time, and he was told by the end of the month, you are gone, we will kick you out. No other reason than we don't want you here. We have enough Chinese English teachers that can do this. So my former English teacher went to Japan. A lot of other English teachers went to Japan and other Asian countries. And within 6 months, the Chinese government realized, okay, our English teachers are not good enough. We need these foreign English teachers. So my friend was approached by English training centers, why don't you come back, we give you more money. And my friend said, no, I'm not going back. And the reason why people did not go back, that there was no logical reason for them to be kicked out in the first place. And that has led to an incredible difficulty in recruiting people to come to China to teach English. Now there's plenty of people still that would do that, but the type of people that want to go and the quality as English teachers has dramatically declined. Now I can say that I have taught in China, not English, but I have seen even in the 2 years that I taught there and the 5 years, almost 5 years that I lived there, that the quality of expatriates, the knowledge level, the ability level has incredibly declined. Now, what did the Japanese government do? They saw, okay, good people no longer want to go there. We don't want that. We want really good people. And it has led to a massive change in Japanese immigration policy. Now, even I can go to Japan. If I live long enough there, if I speak the language, I can become a Japanese citizen. And Japan has changed its approach, its view of outside talent, realizing they are a society that is growing older and older very fast. They need people to work. They need people to generate tax revenue. They need people in jobs that are going to be in high demand in an aging society. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and about the time when I left China in 2021, yet a new policy was implemented by the government that if you are an after-school training center, you cannot make a profit. And basically overnight, the two largest English training centers with lots and lots of dependencies, with lots and lots of locations in China, went out of business. Now this stranded a whole lot of people in the country that no longer had any kind of right to stay. And we're still experiencing a global pandemic, if you're not aware of it. So a simple political decision can lead to a huge knock-on effect on things and people that you don't even want to affect. Now, why were these policies implemented in 2012 and 2021? One reason is that especially the English sector has been suffering from a lot of abuse and violation of regulations. Now, there is a strict policy if you want to come and work in China. When I worked in China at a university, I had to go to the German government and to the British government because I lived in the UK before I came to China, and I had to provide documents that I am not a criminal. If you're going on a tourist visa, you don't need this document. So what a lot of dubious providers did was approach people, bring them in on a tourist visa, tell them, oh, we can change the visa when you are here. You can't. You have to be abroad in order to get a work visa. End of the story. And made it happen that these people were working in China illegally. Obviously, that is not right as well. So in order to stop people from doing illegal things, a very strict policy was being implemented. Both in 2012 and in 2021, very strict policies are being implemented. And what it does, or what it did, is that a very lucrative industry, teachers made a lot of money, those training centers made a lot of money, and the students of these training centers had very good teachers that enabled them to actually benefit from going abroad and study in the UK, in the US, and so on. And what happened is that the political component of decision making, of changing the regulation, outweighed any potential negative economic impact that this will have. At least in the mind of the decision makers. Whether that is right or wrong, that's not for you or me to comment on. It is what happens. Now this has created opportunity outside, for example, for Japan, which has recruited a lot of really good English teachers. And for the future, it is going to create a lot of opportunity in the destinations where Chinese students want to study when they study abroad, namely the US, UK, and Australia. So what is going to happen is that with fewer English teachers that are not as good as the ones they had before, or even no English teachers because they are no longer want to go to China, what will happen is that universities, in order to ensure a certain level of English, will ask Chinese students to complete an English training course of the university instead of going somewhere else. Now, another issue that has come up in this kind of equation is that obviously, if you're implementing policy that is solidly focusing on immediate benefit of certain groups of the economy, you are disadvantaging a lot of other parts of the economy. So, and it remains to be seen how this is progressing. I have made my statement what I think is going to happen, because no matter how much foreign countries want to reduce number of Chinese students, or how much Chinese students for one reason or the other would choose to study in China, it is not going to stop people that want to study abroad. It's not going to happen. And the long-term trend is that about half of the students, both in bachelor and master degrees, are going to study outside of China. When we look at a completely different sector, the aerospace industry, and look at how Airbus is being developed by the European Union, we can see that national interest, or interest of the EU as a quasi-national organization, can influence decision making and create business opportunity. Now, what happened was that the European Union wanted to develop their own aerospace organization, and particularly the French and Germans wanted to establish Airbus as an alternative to the global heavyweight that is Boeing. When you look at all the aeroplane producers in the world, Boeing and Airbus are by far the largest. The next ones will be COMAC, the Chinese, the new Chinese provider, and we have Embraer, and that's about it. There are, of course, more organizations that build aeroplanes, but for the big international market, those are the ones that organizations are going to go to. So how can a new organization like Airbus compete with an established organization, for example, Boeing? Well, obviously it's in the interest of the EU that their company can compete with the American company Boeing. So the EU has provided subsidies to Airbus to an extent that has created a huge trade dispute between the US and the European Union. Still not resolved, still going on and off. And obviously the Americans are doing the same with Boeing. So it is of national interest, and that can supersede any kind of other economic reasons. Now there's also a security question. The United States Air Force has been looking for a new refueling tanker for a number of years. Now Airbus has a product, a modern product ready, and could produce it for the US Air Force right now. However, in the competition, the United States Air Force has always selected Boeing. Why? Because Boeing is in the US. If you want spare parts, if you want a plane, you simply go to them and say, do this. If there's any kind of disagreement between the US government and the European Union, it will be more difficult to obtain planes, spare parts, training, and so on. And that is something that national interest and national security do not want to live with. So obviously, when we look at decision making is not always basic economic facts. There's a lot of other factors that can impact decision making, both on the organization and the nation. Now, my favorite example, favorite quote unquote, is that the EU policy on agriculture has severely affected the agricultural sector, particularly the dairy industry in Nigeria. I always use this example in my CSR courses that doing something good is not necessarily leading to good outcomes. So what is happening is that in the European Union, we have a massive overproduction of all agricultural goods. We have more than we need, way more than we need, especially in terms of milk. And what is happening is the European Union, companies in the European Union are exporting this, and the EU is donating dairy products to whatever they call poor countries. Now that leads to, in many countries, that the products from the EU are cheaper for the consumers than what is locally produced. Now, obviously, for the same product, you want to pay the cheaper price. And that has severely affected especially chicken and dairy farmers that have lost a lot of business to producers from the European Union. Now, it would naturally be in the interest of Nigerian people to not lose this business, and at the same time it would be in the interest to have products for less money available. So there is a very delicate balance the Nigerian government will need to walk in order to just have the right amount of imports and the right amount of domestic support. And that is the difficulties of trade policy, because no matter how good your policy is, you cannot completely predict what domestic and foreign suppliers are going to do with it. Now let's have a look at markets. What are markets? A market is a place where you exchange goods. A market is only a good market or a valid market if it is safe for all participants to go to that market, sell their products, buy their products, and go home again. That means any market needs rules, how to conduct business, and these rules need to be enforced. It is usually the task of the government, where the market is located, to maintain the market in terms of being able to enforce the rules, being able to make rules, and to guarantee the safety for all participants. And that can be a problem. It is relatively easy to create a market domestically. So if I go out, there is a market in my town, in my city, in my country that I can relatively safely attend, buy from, sell to, and that is it. It is much more difficult to do the same thing internationally. So how would I do business in another market like the US, like in Japan, China, Nigeria, doesn't matter where. First of all, I need to overcome a language and cultural barrier, which is difficult enough. So obviously we can use English as a third language, not my native language, maybe not your native language, but we both can speak it proficiently, so we can overcome the language barrier. Now then there is a cultural barrier. For example, one advice a lot of people get when they go to Spain is don't shake hands with a real estate agent, because that means you're buying a house. And that is not how we do real estate business in Germany. I don't think that is how you do real estate business in Nigeria, but it is a cultural difference that we need to be aware of in a certain market. Then there is different kinds of jurisdictions and legal systems. So how are laws made? How is law enforced? And what are the laws of that market? Then there is a problem of distance. How far do I have to go in order to attend that market? Then there is the question of how do we exchange goods? What kind of currency are we going to use? Can I accept your currency? Can I take your currency out of the country? Can I take this currency to my bank and say, well, I want local currency for that? There's a lot of questions that we need to solve in order to create a functioning international market. And that is not always successful. Even if markets exist, there is often a lack of reliability and inconsistencies in those markets. So And it doesn't matter whether these are real reliability or consistency issues. It is the perception of the market participants that is relevant here. So when you see that, well, this market is not fair, then you will probably alter your decision to attend that market. So even if you understand the legal principles and jurisprudence in any kind of market, there is the question of, do you have reliable decision making in a court of law? And if the reliability is actually not there, or worse, that you know that no matter what the law says, when I go to court in a foreign country X, that foreign country will say, your fault, go away. Yeah? So there is always, as a market participant, you will look at the cost and the benefits of attending any kind of market and then make your decision. But even if your decision is to attend any kind of market, to do business in any kind of country, never enter a market without an exit strategy. Policy can change. Policy can change so dramatically overnight that it renders your whole business model obsolete. What if you have difficulty getting money out of that market? What if you as a person cannot safely attend that market? What if the rules and the laws of that market are being used against you? There's obviously a lot more than just plain economic decision making, as in, this is a big market, we want to sell there. One of the consequences is that a lot of people have no idea what the relevant market is. And a lot of times organizations have approached me, I want to start producing in China. It's cheap there. And it is a huge market. And I said, well, first of all, it's no longer cheap to produce in China. Chinese organizations are moving production capacity out of China. And your big market of 1.4 billion, about 200 million of people, 1/7, less than 15% of the population actually have the money to buy your product. Now, how many of those 200 million are interested in your product? That's even fewer people. And in this way, a lot of times incomplete or false information is leading to people not gaining the value that they want or expect from a market entry. What you also need to understand, that even if you are a company from somewhere else, policy in another country can affect you. And that domestic policy is also affected by foreign policy. So for example, what happened when English teachers were being kicked out of China in 2012? A lot of them went to Japan. Well, great for Japan, not good for China. And we need to understand that even the most benevolent government always interferes in the market. The mere existence of any form of government means that the government is affecting and interfering